It's Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. That's the new looking Huck. Got her spring cut, and she is pretty. She's all clean and cut down, and she's all happy, and she's got her paw under, and she's a good girl, yeah. Oh, you're a good puppy. Oh, yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, yeah, you got cut all nice and clean, and you got a shower and a bath. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. And that is the Missing 411 cruise leaving Seattle, September 11th. You want to jump on board, go to Gather Up Events and learn all about it. And if you want to stream our premiere of the National Park movie, you can by going to missing411.com, and you can watch the movie, and you can stream and watch all the interviews that are going to take place at the premiere. It's going to be fun. Go ahead and figure it out. Go to missing411.com and watch. Friends, you guys come through big time lately. I thought I kind of had the know-it-all with the state of Washington. Not true. Many of you have written to me about cases that you know there, and I have figured that out. And I now know that you guys forwarded me some that just blew my mind. Yes, we're going to talk about those in a minute. But one of you, hold on a sec. Come on. There you go. Oops, you just kicked it. One of you sent me a very interesting letter. Hey Dave, I was listening to an old episode of Coast to Coast AM, Mysteries of the Pyramid, in which a guest named Mark Carpenter, a rogue anthropologist, archaeologist, offered an explanation for those who go missing in our national parks. Well, I should know about this. He stated that the Nephilim, a descendant creatures, are abducting people and cannibalizing them, and that they are responsible for the human ritualistic sacrifice that took place in Teotihuacan, Mexico in the 16th century. Hernan Cortez is said to have witnessed up to 80,000 people sacrificed over 4 days to the serpent deity Kulkan. So hold on a sec. I hope you don't think I'm an idiot. And I've done some pretty deep research on national parks. Creatures are abducting and cannibalizing people? I have seen no evidence of that. Cannibalistic? I have not seen any evidence of that. The letter goes on. I've been mulling this over for the past month or so, wondering exactly how Mr. Carpenter came to his conclusions, when by coincidence I happened to be listening to a Troy Brewer, a pastor from Texas who rescues trafficked children, and he said something very similar to Mr. Carpenter said about the existence of Nephilim, descendant creatures, and I was blown away. He has a forum with about 4 other pastors, and they call their podcast Counter. It was purely coincidental, or at least it seemed, that they mentioned the existence of pyramids worldwide, and that the pyramid shape is an electrical generating powerful systems of energy. I've heard this too. Coils that go down hundreds of stories down into the earth. Mr. Carpenter contends that pyramids and tunnels are ways that these creatures travel. I've never heard that. I know a lot of you think that. I've never seen any evidence of it. I'm sorry. The Counter discussed hybrid demonic technology merging with biology to create Nephilim creatures. Wow. I hope I'm not rambling too much. I'm just excited that they are backing up Mark Carpenter's theories independently. So back to Missing 411. These creatures exist. They prey upon people who visit our national parks. They are abducted and become victims of cannibalism. You can't make that jump without some evidence. I stick to facts. I have seen no evidence of cannibalism. I hope you don't get offended with or by these assertions. I don't get offended by them. I don't understand how people can say them, and anyone can believe them because there's no evidence. Yeah. And then they went on and they talked about, I'll read this part. Almost forgot. I was listening to another podcast called The Cryptid Huntress, a very talented remote viewer. She was given the 411 as targets, but did not know when she was remote viewing. Her data revealed people being abducted and killed by government-sanctioned involvement, as well as secret underground military bases. Hold it. I could pretend that I'm an RVer and say the exact same thing. If you go out and you say something, then back it up and find somebody who's missing. Tell me where their bodies are. And if you are so good that you know where these military bases and secret underground places are at, put a pin on the map and tell us. Because the RVers who worked for military back in the time, they could supposedly put a pin on a map where somebody was located in another country. So why aren't these people doing it? These are some of her results. Remote viewing data. Lake Tahoe, Pyramid Lake, submarines. Second target, water deaths. Century data right below. Working down below. Dropping, descent, perched, hidden, analytic overlay. Free space elevator, drop levels, going down, underground. Okay, that's great. Anybody can say that. Prove it. You would not hear me telling you this unless I could back it up. So in short, I appreciate the letter. And I am not in any way demeaning the lady that sent me that. Not in one bit. I appreciate you guys having the interest to go out and look for other things. That's how we find answers. But please, people, do not believe others' baseless claims. Before Missing 411 came around, nobody was looking in national parks for anything. Then all of a sudden, I start coming up with a lot of missing people in suspicious circumstances. Then everyone jumps on board and wants to make a podcast about it and make outrageous claims and have you come and listen. The more outrageous the claims, the more people will listen. I need you to not be one of those gullible people. If there's no proof, don't believe it. I'm sorry. So let's get to the stories today. First of all, a couple years ago, I talked about the disappearance of a 33-foot sailboat in Australia. Oh, they found the boat. It was called the Kaz 2. It was a catamaran, 33 feet, in perfect condition. It left Airlie, Australia on April 15th, 2007. Some people sailing by it days later see it cruising along under power. They honk at it. Nobody comes up. Nobody's there. So they call the Coast Guard. Coast Guard comes out, boards it, and they find a very strange sight. They find meals on the table that haven't been eaten. And the 3 men that were on board, nobody's there. Radio working, survival gear on board, found drifting April 20th, 5 days after it disappeared, or 5 days after it left Airlie. They described the boat in seaworthy condition with no signs of violence on it at all. So it's cruising along under power. Nobody's around. Well, I heard all kinds of theories. I heard, this is the most famous one when something like this happens. One person fell overboard, so everyone jumps in to save that person. Nobody who owns a boat would do that. Nobody's an idiot. The boat's under power, you jump overboard, you're dead. Because that boat's gone. And you'll never be able to catch it. So you turn the boat around and you come back and get the person who's overboard. I start off with that story because I've also told you other stories just this last year of young men disappearing on a sailboat in Kansas. And nobody's ever found. And they were expert sailors. Well, hold your taters. Because I've got to admit that this story I'm going to tell you today is a top 1%er. I've never told it before. I've never heard it before. It's as baffling as any story I'm ever going to tell you. Happened April 14th. Yeah, the Cas 2 left on the 15th of April. This one was on April 14th, 1971. It left from a place called Breakwater Marina in Tacoma. Oh yeah, Tacoma, where we're going to have the premiere for my movie. All 7 people on board were attending a national conference in Seattle for a national fraternity called the Intercollegiate Knights. The Knights were founded in 1922. Each chapter was devoted to service to the campus. There were as many as 67 chapters at one time. Now there was only, now, meaning right now, there's only one in Missouri. The chapter started at the University of Washington as the Knights of the Hook. And here was their statement. Established to improve campus standards and work with other Greek groups on events and fundraising dedicated to good causes and community assistance. That's a good fraternity. So, all of the people, 7 of them, were attending this conference in Seattle. Now, the day this boat went out, April 14th, the ocean waters were calm, light breeze, a perfect night to go out on a sail. A young man named Brian Wilson, 23 years old, was attending the national conference in Seattle. His family lived in North Tacoma, and they owned a 22-foot Catalina sailboat they kept at the Breakwater Harbor. Now, this isn't the boat, but this is the actual same model that disappeared and the same color. Interesting note. For almost 15 years, I lived in Santa Cruz, California. And they have a harbor. And I put my name on the list to get a spot because I wanted to buy a Catalina, my wife and I. And I probably went to 10 different boat shows. I talked to everybody imaginable, did my research, and that boat was one of the safest around. I kid you not. It was good in rough seas, and outside of Santa Cruz Harbor on the Monterey Bay, things could get rough. So if I would have gotten a spot in the harbor, I would have bought that boat. That exact boat. That's how safe it was. Well, Brian had his buddies and his friends, fraternity members, and he invited them to go with him on the family sailboat on that Wednesday. It was spring break, so everyone's in Seattle. It was on Wednesday. And he goes, hey, let me call my mom and make sure I can take the boat out and they're not using it. He calls his mom. Mom says, oh yeah. Yeah, come on out. You can use the boat. Just get the keys. He said, yeah, I'll be with 6 friends. We'll take it out that night. She goes, no problem. Brian puts the friends in the cars. They drive down to the parents' home. His dad's out of town, gets the keys from his mom. And he's talking to his brother. And his brother goes, oh, how long are you going to go out in the boat? And he goes, maybe 90, 120 minutes, hour and a half, 2 hours max. Okay. Brian then drove the group to the harbor. Short drive. Everybody gets out, starts walking towards the Catalina. The security guard on duty saw Brian, goes, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? He explains, oh, how long are you going to be out on it? He goes, an hour and a half, 2 hours max. He goes, hey, nice night for a sail. It's beautiful. 4 to 6 mile per hour winds. No break on the water. Smooth. Perfect. The mom later said that the Catalina carried life preservers, 6 buoy cushions. It had a supply of fresh water, small amount of food, and on board it had a bathroom, which is why Dave liked that boat, because it had a bathroom. And I know I've got to be cognizant of my wife at the time. Women like to use a bathroom. So it had one. That's awesome. Had a small covered cabin underneath. That specific boat didn't have a hull number yet. The boat was blue. Now, the captain, Brian, was a tall, big man, 6'4", in good shape. Friends called him the gentle giant. Soft-spoken, impressive, very smart, respectful, and safety conscious to the max. No drinking on board, none of that. At 9:30 that, oh, by the way, he was a certified Coast Guard captain to be on that boat. At 9:30 p.m., people in the harbor saw the sailboat going out. Under power, meaning the sails weren't up. And that would have been pretty normal. I mean, when you leave a harbor, the best way to leave it in a sailboat is under power because you can control it the best. Most of the people that were interviewed after this incident said that everyone suspected that he was under power that whole night. There wasn't a big breeze, easier to control, nice and smooth, etc. And nobody remembers seeing a sailboat out under sail that night. So the Catalina had this is important. The Catalina had an 8 horsepower outboard motor. And that means that it would push that boat somewhere between 4 and 7 miles per hour, depending on wind, currents, etc. So follow this. If Brian's going to be out from 90 to 120 minutes, that means at that 1 hour mark, he would have to turn around to come back to the harbor and make it back in 2 hours. Right? So this is what I did. This is the harbor where they went out. Breakwater Marina, right there. This is Tacoma. Oh, by the way, the premiere is going to be right there. So my mark right here is a 5 mile mark. He's going to be gone that boat could go 4 to 7 miles per hour max under that engine. So let's just say 5. 5 miles in an hour. That would be the 5 mile perimeter. Not very far, but enough to come back. So that would be the zone, the maximum that he went into. Everybody got it? The next day, nobody had heard from him. Brian hadn't contacted his mom. Nobody on the boat had contacted their parents. Everyone knew that he was going to be out. Mom didn't think much about it in the morning, thinking, maybe they just went back to Seattle. He'll get the key back to me. But she tried calling him, his friends. Nobody knew where he was at. Mom gets in a car, drives down to the harbor. just about has a heart attack. His car's in the parking lot, and the boat's gone. Headlines in the Spokane Daily Chronicle. Something nobody wants to ever see. Sailboat lost with 5 students from Washington State University in Pullman. 5. Well, who was on that boat? Well, Brian was the captain. This is Brian, the 6'4" guy. Gary Oman, right here. Gary was from Pullman, where the school was at. And that made sense because his dad was the assistant athletic director at WSU. Gary was 19 years old. James Dickinson, right there. He's from Albion, Washington, 19 years old. Barbara Komorik, right here. Barbara, 22 years old, from Seattle, born April 3rd, 48 in Pasco, Washington. She attended and graduated Chief Stealth High School, graduated in 66, went on to attend Columbia Basin College, 66 to 69, got her nursing school credential and her degree. She was employed at Radlick Hospital in Richland, Washington. Friends said she was very caring and loving, and she was attending school at night, trying to get an advanced degree. I tried to find pictures on everyone who disappeared. I couldn't find them. But let me tell you what they said about some of these people. James Dickinson from Albion. His father was a college professor. James was considered super smart, could answer almost anything. Dennis Newton from Potlatch, Idaho. Everyone knew he was a brainiac, had the ability to learn anything quickly, and had a photographic memory that everyone knew. Friends, this just wasn't your average drunken fraternity outing. This was like the cream of the crop. And I know you guys get tired of me saying this. Bear with me. Bear with me. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Williams owned the Catalina sailboat. At the time the boat went out, Mr. Williams was out of town, but he came back quickly. On April 15th, when Mrs. Williams hadn't gotten that call, she went to that harbor, saw the boat wasn't there, and the parked car, and she reported her son missing to Tacoma police. Tacoma police confirmed that people did see the boat go out. Tacoma police contacted their sheriff's department and the U.S. Coast Guard and requested a search and rescue for the boat. Now, 5 of the 7 people were students at Washington State University, way out there in eastern Washington and Pullman. These were not big city kids, small towns. So Tacoma calls the Coast Guard Rescue Coordination Center in Seattle. They give an update on the Catalina. The Coast Guard immediately dispatches 2 helicopters and 3 boats, working a grid pattern outside that harbor looking for the boat. They didn't go very far because they didn't think the boat was going to go very far. The area of that disappearance is surrounded by islands. Island, island, island. This area out in here generally area right here stays pretty calm because of all the breakage in the wind by the islands. This isn't like you're in an open ocean with huge breakers. Now, it does get rough because the wind does get going out there, but not that night. On April 16th, word quickly got out that the students were missing. It started to get big headlines. It was starting to get big headlines because everyone thought that they'd be found that April 15th day. It's very hard to miss a 22-foot boat out there. Well, the Coast Guard Auxiliary in Seattle heard about this, and Tacoma kicked in, and 40 private boats immediately went out into the Puget Sound. And they jumped in to help in the grid. University students who were on break, hundreds of them, went to the beaches that surrounded this area, and they were told to look for anything unusual. Pieces of boats, wreckage, life preservers, anything that seemed out of place, to call the Coast Guard and they'd look at it. April 17th, search started to get larger. Nothing was found in that perimeter or those parameters that were initially given out about how far the boat was going to go. They'd be out only an hour and a half, 2 hours. Well, people quickly started to get frustrated. April 18th to the 20th, search got larger, parameters moved out. They had in accumulation over 200 boats on the water looking, 3 helicopters. Civil Air Patrol was now involved. The Coast Guard commander came out and said that this was the largest maritime search in Puget Sound history. Tacoma PD, Coast Guard Auxiliary, Civil Air Patrol, people on the beaches. Some of these searches went on for weeks. On April 21st, the president of Washington State University made a plea to the Coast Guard commander to continue searching. The commander came out and said, if I do that, then I'm saying that I didn't do a good job covering the area that I did. But we did. There's nothing there. There was no other search. But you got to remember something, folks. That area, a lot of boat traffic. A lot. January 6th, 1980, Herald News. They did a special on the disappearance. It stayed in the news for decades. Pierce County, where Tacoma's at, was involved. Pierce County Sheriff's. One of their deputies was interviewed, and he said, the disappearance is a little more than mysterious. That boat disappeared without a trace. Nothing. Something should have turned up by now. It's just weird. I don't think I've ever heard a deputy talk like that. If it sank, most of those kids could have swam to shore. And they had life preservers. They never saw an oil slick, a gas slick. If it sank, it would have left. No life preservers were ever seen floating, washed up on beaches. No bodies ever surfaced. No Mayday call was ever made. The Coast Guard on that final day of searching went all the way out to Anacortes, Olympia, and Port Angeles. And Seattle, way outside the search parameters, for anything that might have matched. And nothing did. Now, if a fire had happened on the boat, it would have been seen for miles. And debris would be floating on the surface. Nothing. Remember, the seas were calm that night. In 1980, the U.S. Navy came out and conducted sonar on all of the areas of the high probability that the Catalina would be in. They found nothing. Now, friends, I know you're here because you're smart. I know a lot of you are super smart. I racked my brain and I read 50 articles on this. There's no good theory about what happened here. But you know what's one common thing? 3-4 people on that boat were described as super smart. Now I want you to look at this little map I made. This is a map of where all of the victims came from. Now, this is the school out here, and 3 of the victims were from the area that the school was in. One, Newton, lived in Idaho. Everyone else lived in Washington. So, small town, small. Tacoma, Comoric, the female, Seattle. Now, why do I show you this? Because I was thinking the other day, not too long ago, 2 kids in Kalispell died in an accident, going through an intersection. Vehicle ran a red light, killed them. So, when those kids were born, what were the chances that anyone would say that they would have been at that intersection at that time to be victims in that way? So when I look at this, all of these people didn't know each other 4 or 5 years earlier. They're all from different towns. Yet, on April 14th, 1971, they were in Seattle. They were friends of Williams, and they were all invited to go to Tacoma, and they all ended up here on a sailboat. So was it predestined for this to happen? For those 7 to be on the boat? Now, 4 out of the 7 were said to be super smart. Comoric, the female nurse, giving, caring nurse. Now, some of you get upset at me and say, Dave, you keep making this point about, it seems like only the good people are taken. Only the good people are disappearing. I'm not looking for it, folks. I promise you, I'm not looking for this. One of you out there sent this case to me. Now, if somebody had said that one of these 7 was a drug addict, was an alcoholic, I'd say it. No. These were all the kind of kids we wanted our kids to grow up to be. Where are they? What happened? I don't know. But I'm starting to get quickly convinced that there truly is something about the character, the intellect of the people who disappear. Is it something about their brain power? Is it something about their demeanor? Their ability to get along with others? What is it? I'm not sure. Now, if I come across a case next week that fits the profile, and we have somebody who's on the fringe of society, course I'm going to talk about it. I'm not keeping anything from you. And lastly, water. There's a group of you out there that don't believe the water is the issue, that I make that up, that I make too much out of water. If you've been here for a while, you know I've told you about a lot of cases where people just on water, near water, around water. This one, I don't think there's ever been a case I've talked about where 7 people disappeared without a trace and nobody was found. Troubling. What's even more troubling is that this happened in 71. 50 years, 55 years, and still nothing? After all the storms that have been kicked up and wreckage that has been blown onto beaches, still nothing? These are the kind of things I lay in bed and I worry about. I don't know if I worry about them, but I think about them all the time. And I ask for answers. I appreciate you guys sending these things into me. It really keeps my mind going. And you guys are great. We speak about kindness all the time, mental health. Life's tough sometimes. We all know that. But remember, the sun will come up tomorrow. There are dogs in the shelter waiting to be adopted that need you. And I challenge you to just go down to any dog shelter. Just walk around. Some Saturday when you're really bored, go down there. Really. Be safe. Be kind. Paulides out.